Beep, 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 beep. I found something really interesting that is tangential to most of the stuff we talk about, but I think it's important. It's worth having a look at, right? Okay, so buy me a coffee, would you? Buy me a coffee, or send me a super thanks, or share, subscribe, become a subscriber and turn your notifications on. So, when people come to be part of the Winning Mindset program, the Warrior Teacher, when they turn up for the first time and I take them through everything, we talk about who should we be, how should we be, what do we need to be thinking, what do we need to be understanding, and I take them through, how I see the beginnings of the program. And part of the beginning of that is you ain't getting no trigger warnings, kids, right? So I say effectively there will be no trigger warnings. If I'm going to show you something, I'm showing it for a reason, and I want it to have as much intensity as possible. When you're learning, intensity is good. The intensity of the learning experience is directly related to how much you're likely to remember it. So if I can shock them, all the better, right? Or show them something that makes them go, oh, which I do frequently, right? So have a look at this. I put it on, but I never say, oh, by the way, this has got bad language, or by the way, this is gory, or by the way, this might trigger you. Never, and I'm never going to, right? By instinct as a teacher, I knew it was a bad idea. So the Warrior Teachers know damn well as we move forward that I'm going to challenge them, right? What's the point in doing it otherwise? Okay, there's no point. We're just going to all sit round for a couple of hours a month and go, can we agree on this? No, I'm going to bring in stuff that's going to make you think. That means we can have a debate in the room and people can discuss the different ideas. It's fantastic. I was right. I was right not to do that. I was right to understand that trigger warnings are the enemy of learning and the friend to equity, to the flattening of the human experience to nothing. That's what trigger warnings are. So I was really pleased that somebody sent me this publication from August the 18th, 2023. Interesting. A meta-analysis of the efficacy of trigger warnings, and content notes. So when they're these censorious dribble gibbons come along and go, put a trigger warning on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Children are hurt in the making of that, or whatever it may be. Titus Andronicus, warning, cannibalism. Warning, cannibalism, right? Or things like that, right? That's what they do. When you go into the theatre, this story about Joan of Arc contains scenes of violence and burning women. Yeah, you think? It's on Fawlty Towers. They've got it on Fawlty Towers, haven't they? Well, this may contain something you might find slightly offensive. So just to coddle you in cotton wool rather than shock the shit out of you, which tends to make you learn things quicker. If you're about to watch Blackadder, in which people have humour that you find objectionable. Trigger warnings, right? Trigger warnings, content warnings, or content notes are alerts about upcoming content that may contain themes related to past negative experiences. Advocates claim that warnings help people to emotionally prepare for or completely avoid distressing material. I don't think you should be able to avoid distressing material. I'd go Clockwork Orange on your ass, stick things in your eyes. Do you remember? Oh, they forced his eyes open because the younglings watched it the other night and they were like, this would never get made today. And I'm like, no, it wouldn't, because we live in an age of Puritans. So for those of you that don't know, Clockwork Orange, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Malcolm McDowell, right? Well, he was a beauty when he was younger, old Malcolm, right? Not so much now, he's a bit leathery. So they force his eyeballs open like that. I mean, literally force them open with what looks like sort of these strange reverse caliper things. And his eyes are wide open and he's tied in a straitjacket and he's placed in the front of the cinema and he's forced to watch violence on screen for days and days. And while he does that, somebody sits next to him and puts drops in his eyes. At the same time, just prior to the viewing that he's going to see, they inject him with a drug that makes him feel physically sick for hours. Right, so it's an aversion therapy to violence. This was the idea. There was lots of this stuff in the 70s. Aversion therapy to violence. Well, of course, the first part of the film is about him being violent. It's about violence of the individual. The second part of the film is about the violence of the state. And then the result of the state's violence. It's fascinating. It's a brilliant film. Brilliant. Hypersexualized environments. Weak parents. Kubrick knew his stuff. Clockwork Orange, right? So I stick it on. The younglings are there. They're not getting a trigger warning. I just go enjoy this. And but the intensity of the experience of seeing it is blunted if you give them a trigger warning. So I don't. What they're saying here is that advocates claim that warnings help people to emotionally prepare or to completely avoid. Why would you want to do that? Emotionally prepare. Oh, sod off. If you're that weak, you don't belong in universities for a start. If you're that weak, I wouldn't employ you. Go on home to your safe space with your rabbit. You support rabbit or support peacock or aardvark, whatever it is you've chosen. Don't choose hamsters. They only last 8 months. Can't even build up a decent relationship with a hamster in 8 months. Critics argue that warnings both contribute to a culture of avoidance at odds with evidence-based treatment practices and instill fear about upcoming content. A body of psychological research has recently begun to empirically investigate these claims. We present the results of a meta-analysis of all empirical studies on the effects of these warnings. Overall, we found that warnings had no effect on effective responses. And what I mean by that is no effect on emotional responses to negative material or on educational outcomes. So therefore, they're absolutely immaterial. However, warnings reliably increased anticipatory effect. Findings on avoidance were mixed, suggesting either these warnings have no effect on engagement material or that they increased engagement with negative material under specific circumstances. Limitations and implications for policy and therapeutic practice are discussed. And then you can read what they found in their study. You don't need Superman to tell you this. You don't need some study to tell you this. That, if you tell people something's scary, the likelihood is they'll want to watch it. If you tell people something's gory, why do you think we stop and look at car crashes? Same thing, right? Same thing. Years ago, when they used to have videos, nasties, and when films came out and you get this voice on the film, and they want to make you think it was something that it wasn't. It was a film, for example. I think there was one called The Brood by David Cronenberg, which is a bloody good film. Samantha Edgar. But you could, I remember the sort of, they showed picture in the cinemas going, people going like that and, doing all this sort of fawning. Never in the human realms of horror have we seen its like before. And that's like a kind of encouraging trigger warning, isn't it? Human degradation at levels unseen by man. And then they'd release the film and it would just be another horror film, wouldn't it? You always get that. You get those great voices. He didn't know what was coming. You've never seen anything like it. Coming soon from Paramount Films. That's like the equivalent in it, but in reverse. So we've always known that people like to be titillated while they can go, oh, at the same time, don't they? So you always have to discuss and you're going to hate it, and then they sort of lasciviously watch it and then go, oh. Or they watch it in the name of some grander cause. That's why people will go and look at the Hottentot Venus or the Elephant Man. I'm only doing it so I can understand, yeah. Wasn't it Mitchell and Webb that did a brilliant thing about this called The Boy with a Bum for a Face? An arse for a face. Just so you could look at a boy with an arse for a face. Genius. So it turns out that trigger warnings are in fact nonsense and that they have little or no efficacy. So therefore, why bother with them? Just thought this was an interesting one. I'll see you later.